I hope you enjoyed part one of our conversation with Dr. Anne Louise Lockhart. Today, we're going to jump right back in for part two.
I think the big switch that's the hardest for parents at this stage is that during the junior high stage, the peers start to be more important than family. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest grieving point for parents, because their kid used to see them as like the best thing ever. And now they're like, oh, you're so cringy. And so that's hard. Right. So I think that's the biggest thing that I see at that age.
Tell me what you think about this parenting hack that I heard. So if you really want to know what is going on with your kids in middle school and even high school, you can volunteer to be the person that drives all the kids around, because when they're sitting in the back seat, they forget that the parent is driving, and you get to hear all of the stuff, who likes who, what's going on, and also having your house be the house that kids want to go to, because then you get a chance to see who your kids are hanging out with. Instead of them going to someone else's house, you get to really look like the cool parent, but really you're just doing intel, you're just taking intel, you're just saying, okay, who my kids are hanging around. Then you can start asking questions. So what do you have in common with such and such? I've never seen y'all have any classes together. So then it's more inquiry versus judgment, and you get to see who they're hanging out with.
Absolutely. Yeah, you be the mom driving people around. You are the hang up spot and the sleepover spot.
Yeah.
And I think another big one too, to add on to that, is knowing, associating, and even being friends with your kids' friends' parents, because that's a huge protective factor actually during the teenage years. Yeah. Because the kids that are hanging out with your kids, they come from families that have certain values or certain ways of interacting or speaking or things that they believe and watch. And if you are aware of that, then you can be able to know, like, what are they being exposed to? What are the other parents' concerns about their teenagers? And it's a really good kind of bird's eye view into what's happening as well too.
Okay. Is there anything different in the middle school years that you see in the high school years that parents have challenges with that we didn't hit on with toddler and middle school?
I think it's just more of the same of middle school, but just more independence.
Yeah.
Because now they're driving, or they're riding with other people who have their driver's license. They're doing more things and spending more time away from home. So there's much less oversight. And that's why having a positive relationship with your kid from a very early age, so that they know when they screw up that you are not going to lose it.
Yeah.
That's going to be such an important foundation, so that when they're finally 16, 17, 18, and they're at a party and they're stuck because everybody's drunk and they don't know how to get home, they know they can call you rather than be unsafe.
Yeah.
Because they know you're not going to freak out and, just ground them till eternity. And I think that foundation from early on is so important, so that they feel like you're coming from a place of understanding. And I think sometimes I tell parents this about like unconditional love and acceptance, and they're like, well, that's showing our kid that we accept and approve what they've done. I'm like, no, it's not. It's showing them that you love them regardless, that there is nothing that I can do that's so big that you will fall out of love with me.
Yeah.
That I'm unconditionally loved and accepted does not mean I accept every behavior choice you make. Right. It just means that I will have your back. And I tell my kids that all the time, that if there's something at school that happens with a teacher or a peer or whatever, you can always tell us and we'll have your back. But we expect that you're going to be honest and forthcoming about it, because we can't come in there guns blazing and then you've been lied about something.
Yeah.
So we're going to have your back, and they need to know that they can be honest and talk about these things. But that foundation has to be set early on.
Dr. Lockhart, that is so important, because I feel that once kids get into the end part of middle school into high school, if that parent-child relationship is fractured and they're not a safe place to go and share, hey, I'm having challenges with my friend, or I like this guy, who else do they have to talk to that can give them sound advice besides a peer that's their age? You don't want your kid getting wisdom from a kid that's their age, that doesn't have any years of experience. And so parents, if you're listening, it's really good to try to nurture those relationships and not be so judgmental and critical of their decisions. Just listen, be a safe place, because they need to know that they can go to you with a lot of the stuff that that's going on. I used to talk to kids in my office, and I was like, man, if I was a parent, I would want to know my kid is going through this. It breaks my heart that there is a lack of trust there, which is why you are so needed.
Yeah.
You are so needed. So when someone goes to your website and they are interested in parent coaching, they're going to complete the parent quiz. It's going to ask some questions: your name, email, age of child, biggest parent challenge. They're going to submit that. What's next after that?
So then it comes into our practice inbox, and our practice assistant will contact them by email, phone, text, however they prefer, and just get a little bit of information if we need some more clarity in terms of what exactly they're looking for. We pretty much know it once they've done the full quiz. So that way we can match them with the parent coach that would be best suited for them. So if it's something where they're local, they're in San Antonio, and they're having lots of issues with a 3-year-old who is hitting mom and they can't ever get out of the house without people just feeling like they're losing it, then maybe Kimberly can go in for the in-home behavior consultation and then also observe the child at the school. So again, we want to look at like who's the best person, or if they're a college age student that they're having concerns with because they have a child who is very anxious or having panic attacks, then that would be a good fit for me. So, it's just really looking at like who is the best person and getting a little bit more information, because we want to make sure that there's a good fit. But if they're looking for something that we feel like is not a good match, then that's the other thing we'll do, is help them find somebody in their area or provide resources, because we know that by the time people reach out, should have reached out months ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if they reach out and they hit a wall, it's kind of like they're done. So we really want to be as supportive as possible for people, so that even if we're not a fit, we want to help them at least continue the process to find the best fit for them.
Absolutely. How do you determine who does virtual one-on-one and who is appropriate for group?
So we don't have, for our practice right now, we don't have any groups going on. The only thing that I have is the group membership, the online parent membership. Okay. And that is like kind of self-select in that way. And that's the kind of a monthly membership where they have access to all the courses and all the resources and monthly group parent coaching. So that is kind of like decided by themselves there. But otherwise, it's really the distinction for us is whether someone needs therapy or they need coaching.
Yes.
And that's mainly the distinction we try to help people with, because we can only see people for therapy if they live in the state of Texas because of our license requirements.
Right. So someone is listening and they know they need assistance. They know they need help. They've tried everything. How do they determine, or do you determine, whether or not they are appropriate for therapy if they live in Texas, or if they should go the coaching route? Because the two are really different. Yes.
Well, I think that's where the screening process comes in, where the assistant will talk to them and find out like what exactly is going on, what they've tried, if there's any risk issues going on, like suicidality or hospitalization or abuse, legal issues, divorce, really looking to see like what's going on. If it's really something that they need to work through, heal from, and process in terms of that, then we'll kind of guide them in terms of like, it sounds like the therapy route might be very helpful for your child. And then family therapy, for example, if it's something like going on with depression or anxiety, if there's a diagnosable condition that they really need assistance with. If it's something that's more like looking at, okay, these are just parenting issues that are going on and you need education, guidance, and support for something that you do feel overwhelmed by, but it's something that feels manageable and it doesn't feel like it's a high risk situation going on, then we might really kind of direct them more towards the parent coaching to kind of walk them through. However, there's times when I've seen people in parent coaching, and as I'm speaking to them and as I'm getting more information, then I'll guide them in saying, it sounds like based on what you're reporting, like your child might benefit from a psychological assessment, because it sounds like more than just tantrums. I'm wondering if there's something else going on. So I'll kind of refer them to get that within their area. Or if they may need to see an occupational therapist and need to do something with sensory processing disorder, then kind of guiding them towards that, or speech therapy. So really trying to educate, again, it's really about educating parents, because this information it's accessible, but it's not, because it's like, how do you even know what to look for?
Right. There's so much information out there.
There's so much information, and then where do you even start? So really trying to educate them on what this looks like and what to look for, and how to look for someone who's competent, so that you feel like you can get the answers you're looking for.
During your parent coaching, how much of unlearning do you think do you have to do? Because a lot of parenting comes from what environments they were brought up in. A lot of it is cultural, and so sometimes clinicians and coaches have to tenderly bring awareness to some of the parenting styles and interactions that might be the cause of some of the behavior. It's very delicate to do that without the parent coming away feeling judged or criticized. So how do you approach that with delicacy?
Yes, absolutely. That's a tough one for lots of parents, because again, it goes back to how they were parented. And what I found and what I find is most parents try to parent nothing like their parents or just like their parents. But either way, they're still moving away from or toward that mindset. And so, but again, they're doing it based on a mindset that's 25, 30, 40 years old. And that's not the world we're in now. And so really helping them to understand that there's certain values and foundational elements of parenting and family that, yes, you hold on to, but then there's others that you have to adapt to, because that's not the world we're living in anymore. So I find that most of parenting is a mindset issue, because if you have a certain mindset, you're going to get stuck in it and you're going to get very rigid. And that's what causes a lot of the clashing. And it can be even something simple. Like when my husband and I first got married, because we've been married 24 years now, and we waited about 12 years before we had our first one. And I remember when we first got married, the way I was raised by a single mom and youngest of 3. And when we had dinner, for example, the TV was off. We only had one TV in the entire house. The TV was off, and we sat down at the dinner table and ate dinner as a family. Yeah. His family, he grew up in Arizona and with 2 parents, and they would eat over the pot in the kitchen, somebody in front of the TV on, TV tray. And when I first went to a family gathering with my in-laws, I was like, what is going on here? And so for me, I was like, well, no, we should sit at the dinner table. He's like, well, what's the big deal? Let's have the TV on. Even something simple as that was part of what we valued. It was time to sit and talk. So we had to talk as a couple that when we had kids, what is that going to look like for meals, for example? So I think really having parents understand that there's things that you're fighting over and arguing over that is really not that deep. And you have to change your mindset in terms of what is it that you really value. And for me, turning off the TV and eating as a family meant that we got to check in. I see the value of knowing what's going on, especially when you haven't seen your kids all day. So being able to spend that moment to do that was important. So we will do that the majority of the time. And then on Friday nights, for example, we have the TV on and have family movie night, So I think it's that mindset is really big when it comes to parenting. That has to be addressed before going into any intervention, honestly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of online videos and information about conscious parenting, intentional parenting, and a lot of people feel like it don't take all that. They don't need to be doing all that, and so they're not really sensitive to their kids' emotions. I was just having a conversation with someone that I know, and they were stressed out about the response that their teenager had over an event. I'm like, it don't take all that. But it might for them. It might take all that for them, and those emotions are normal and they need to come out. But if you're raised where a child is supposed to be seen and not heard, it is really hard to parent in 2022 when parents feel like they have to tiptoe around their kids' emotions, so they think. What would you say to parents that are like over the whole, intentional, whatever catchphrase there is, like over it? My mom didn't raise my dad, put some Robitussin on it, and what would you say to those parents who think this is just a new fad and our kids are too soft and I was raised this way and I turned out good, but did they?
Right. I hear that all the time. Yeah. The example I use is when I was growing up in the 80s, we had rotary phones and they worked just fine. Yeah. But if we were to use rotary phones today, we couldn't do things like this. I couldn't FaceTime. I couldn't do Instagramming. Do rotary phones have value? Absolutely. They're nice like decorations now as antiques, but they're not effective in 2022. They were at one point. So the way our parents parented us was based on what they knew best, based on what their parents did for them, or caregivers, or whoever they were. But we adjust. We, just like technology adjusts. Yeah. The cars that we drive, the way we do our hair. I was just talking to my kids about back in the day, we didn't have the products we had for our black hair. Like there's all these things, like we adjust. Why can't parenting be the same way? Yeah. We now know better. There's more science behind it. It's not new age. It's just different because we are now more informed. And really a lot of the stuff, whether it's conscious, gentle, positive, intentional, purposeful parenting, whatever it is, it's all the same foundation in terms of respecting your child as a human being worthy of emotions and thoughts and opinions. Yeah. Not that they can just be like, what, Becky? Not, but it's not about being disrespectful. It's about listening and being aware of what your kids need, aware of how to respond to their feelings so that you're not being shut down. They're not being shut down the way you were shut down. That if they're struggling with their self-esteem or with anxiety or with depression, rather than just brushing it off and saying, well, you should be grateful. Look at everything I've given to you.
Oh my gosh.
I could be grateful and be depressed. Hello.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think we have to adjust because everything else has adjusted. We've adjusted everything else. Why would we stick into old school way of parenting when everything else we've done has moved forward? And so I think we have to see it from a different mindset. And it's funny too, the people who always tell me, well, I turned out fine, those are the rudest people.
Yes.
I find they're the most inflexible. They come to your inbox, your DMs and your comments with such rage.
And parent meetings.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? And so I'm just like, I don't think you turned out fine.
Yeah. Describe fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. What does that mean exactly? And just because, and even if you did turn out fine, it doesn't mean your kid will under those same parenting circumstances. Like they need a different way of parenting.
Yeah.
And why would we do the same thing if we know better?
Right. That's the key, knowing better, because when we know better, we should do better.
We should.
How often do you address in your parent meetings social skills? Because I do a lot of volunteering and I typically have kids that are homeschooled or just kids that are really, really smart. And the parents rave about how smart their kids are. But socially, there's some skills that are missing. But the parents don't seem to think that needs to be addressed. I personally, you can talk me off the edge of this. I might be a little bit too, invested in it. But I feel if you don't attend to the skills of giving your kids social skills, I personally think that's a form of neglect, because you have to be able to maneuver through relationships, through communities, through jobs, and have social skills. Is that something that y'all address in your parent coaching with parents about if a parent comes and says, hey, my kids don't have any friends, or they're having challenges making friends?
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, I agree. I agree that social skills are seriously lacking. And I see it not just with homeschool kids, I'm seeing it across the board.
Yes. Yeah.
Seeing it across the board. And I'm seeing a lot of kids and teenagers who don't know how to interact with their peers, with adults. They don't know how to start and end a conversation, how to transition. I think a lot of that honestly has to do with our devices.
Yeah.
And they are so on their devices so much, they don't know how to read the room, how to interact, how to engage. I just had a parent coaching meeting with a family who had a bunch of kids that they took to Disney World. And they said they saw so many kids at the park with their iPads and cell phones, just walking around the park. And I'm like, there's so much to see at Disney. How are you on your phones?
Yes.
Yeah. And I know it's a good babysitter. I know it's a good regulator, it seems like, but I found that kids who have too much screen time, they don't know how to socialize as much. They have their self-esteem and their mood is worse because of all the comparison and keeping up with the Joneses kind of mentality. And they don't know how to have normal and real human conversations. Yeah. So yes, so I think having the parent coaching session where we kind of guiding the parent in terms of how to model that and how to provide appropriate moments for the kids to engage in that. So whether it's through sports, through volunteer activities, through being in the band, extracurriculars, clubs, just different things that they can be involved in, or just things like play groups and play times with other kids, sleepovers, dinner parties, parties in general, karaoke. Like there's so many opportunities for them to do that, but it needs to be modeled so they can see you doing it. How do my parents speak to other people? Give and take, doing it with them, so that they know how to do it in terms of a give and take. That's why eating at the dinner table or checking in with your kid, how, tell me about what was the best part of school today, and really engaging them in open dialogue back and forth, you sharing your day, them sharing theirs.
I am loving this conversation with Dr. Ann Louise Lockhart. Part 2 was just as good as part 1. Make sure you come back and check out the last part of our conversation, which will be part 3. This is Health and Wellness with Coach A.T. Moore. Thanks for watching.